Ladies and gentlemen, I am Yusrael and welcome back to the fallout from yesterday's leaks on Holodeck. Yes, many thanks before we get going to the people on the various boards dotted around to interwebs who tipped me off, deliberately or otherwise, that there were other ships besides the Wells that had leaked. This is one of them, the Korath. Now, I am 95% sure that this is the Klingon equivalent of the Wells class timeship that I covered in my last video. Three reasons for that. First off is the general shape of the ship. Second off are the paint jobs, particularly the Type 0, which basically screams Klingon. And the third reason is the ship's name. Korath was a bit character in the Voyager finale Endgame. He was the Klingon scientist who developed the chronodeflector. That, by the way, is the MacGuffin that Admiral Janeway promptly stole from him to, yes, you guessed it, travel back through time and get the episode's plot going. Now, the fact that we have a Klingon counterpart could mean several things. The first is that we're going to see a counterpart storyline for the Klingons, probably tying into the Tholians in Season 7. The second, unfortunately, is that these and the Wells could be Z-Store ships. God, I hope that's not the case. The other big leak, even though it's in a far earlier form, is the Vesta class, or at least a very early alpha of it. This really isn't playable yet, honestly. It only exists as a costume. There are no numbers attached to it, no bridge stations, no nothing. I can give you nothing except the early textures. And frankly, I can't even give you much of that because, as you can see, they haven't finished the hull textures yet. So we've got the silhouette, we've got the name, and we've not got a lot else bar the windows and the lighting patterns. But let's get it into space anyway and stack it up against a few other starships for comparison. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Vesta class, it made its debut in the Destiny series of novels in the shape of the USS Aventine. Now, in those books it's described as being a multi-role explorer, kind of a more flexible version of the Sovereign, and as you can see it's almost the size of a Sovereign. There's a displacement of 3.3 million metric tons for the Vesta, compared to, I believe it's usually 3.5 million tons quoted for the Sovereign. Why is this significant? Well, the Vesta's been the subject of speculation in the STO community for a fair while now, and one suggestion that's been fairly prominent is that this was going to be a science vessel that could equip dual cannons as its party piece. So basically a science-escort mashup. Now, personally, I don't rate this because this thing is the size and mass of a heavy cruiser. So my own pet theory, bear in mind that this is complete speculation, we have no numbers as yet, is that what we're going to see is either a full multi-role cruiser, maybe using a Commander Universal station, or we're going to see the scientific answer to the Regent, so Commander Engineering, Lieutenant Commander Science, Lieutenant Universal, Lieutenant Science as its bridge officer setup. We could very well see dual cannons on this ship, but I have to note that if it turns like a cruiser, it's going to have the same problem as the Galaxy X with keeping those guns on target. And we all know how that's ended up for the Gal X. When was the last time you saw one of those outside of static siege duties, or a few really oddball builds that really depended on either gimmicks like the subspace jump console, ambush tactics using the cloaking device, or heavy use of the RCS accelerators. But I digress. As I said, this is complete speculation at the moment. And as I said, this is complete alpha work indeed. I mean, you can see that half the little glowies, like the forward ventral deflector, aren't lined up. There are bits hanging off the shuttle bay from certain angles, And of course, most glaringly, the hull textures haven't been implemented yet either. But given that there were rumours circulating that there were copyright issues stopping this ship being used, it looks like those have been resolved, and that can only be a good thing. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been part 2 of the Great Holodeck leak of the 23rd of August, and if I can get enough material for a part 3, I shall see you next time.